Ready when you are.
Okay. I call this June 4th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Chair Hornseth, would you please lead the pledge of allegiance?
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, may we please have the roll call?
Roll call for tonight's meeting. Allman is excused. Charbonneau is excused. Verhey.
Here.
Hornseth.
Present.
Hubbard.
Here.
And Chair Griswold.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum.
The next on the agenda is citizen comments on any subject except those items scheduled for a public hearing. Those who have signed in will be given the first opportunity to speak. Time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 36 minutes total time for this agenda item. Clerk, do we have any public signed up?
There's one person signed in for citizen comments, Jonathan Sewell.
Okay.
Maybe that was for the work session. Okay, no one has signed in then
Okay.
for the meeting.
Does anyone in the public wish to speak on any subject not a public hearing? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. I need a motion for approval
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
and a second, please.
I'll second.
Okay, and, oops. So, I'm sorry, do we need a vote on that, or that's just it?
Oh, were there any changes to be made or anything to be pulled from the consent agenda?
No.
So, ready to vote on the
Okay,
approval?
ready to
Okay.
vote on approval of the agenda.
All right, this will be the roll call vote for the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda. Hubbard,
Yes.
Verhey,
Yes.
Hornseth,
Yes.
and Chair Griswold.
Yes.
Okay, your agenda and consent agenda have been approved, and on the consent agenda were the May 7th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes.
Next on the agenda is special orders, presentations, and reports. We have no proclamations or awards. City Administration report? That's
Thank you,
you.
Madam Chair. Just want to remind the public that we still have one vacant seat on the commission, and that is open for application at any time. Then, just to give the commission an update on some items that you have approved and discussed in the past, there will be a public hearing with City Council on June 10th to approve the new zoning map layout that was approved back in May, I believe now. And then the cluster subdivision ordinance, which would be striking cluster subdivisions as an allowed use by conditional use permit from the land uses allowed table. Both of those will be items on the June 10th City Council meeting. And then Council has directed administration to turn the Jeep trailhead into a fire lane and then add corner signs on the corner of that street there by the Jeep trailhead that will state no parking. And so by turning the Jeep trailhead into a fire lane, it makes it easier to enforce the no parking in that area. Then just an update from the P&Z rules and procedures. Danny's still working on those, and we'll provide updates on that as he makes progress. And then along with that, we are working on other items to help inform the commission as well as the public. One of those is going to be a flow chart that details the various applications that come through our office, and then the different stages that those applications go through, whether it's approval by administration or approval by administration, then P&Z, or administration, P&Z, and City Council. Just outline those different layers of approvals just to inform the public and the commission better.
Thank you. Any questions for administration? Okay. Let's move on to other reports and announcements. There are none. and there are no presentations. That moves us along to public hearings. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. After all speakers have spoken, a person may speak for a second time for no more than 1 minute. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public signed up to speak? Oh,
Excuse me, Chair Griswold.
I need to follow my script a little closer. I've got training wheels on. The first public hearing item is Resolution 2024-013. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the title into the record?
Resolution 2024-013 of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Seward, Alaska, granting a variance from Seward City Code 15.10.140B31C to Denise Cerniglia to construct an accessory apartment in a garage that is not attached to the primary dwelling unit on Lot 16A, Clearview Subdivision, Replat No. 1, located at 1702 Resurrection Blvd, within a two-family residential R2 zoning district.
And I need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve 2024-013.
I'll second.
Very good. Administration, do you have any comments on that?
Yes, so the applicant initially had applied for a building permit to construct an accessory apartment on her property in a detached garage. However, an accessory apartment is allowed in the R2 zoning district, but it is required to be part of the primary dwelling unit. And since the garage was detached, the accessory apartment would not be allowed. However, the garage is considered an accessory building on the property, and under the definition for accessory building in City Code, it states that an accessory building will be considered part of the main building if it is connected by a common wall or by a breezeway. So the applicant was informed that they would need to attach the garage to the house with a breezeway before the building permit would be approved. The applicant provided plans to construct a breezeway to connect the garage and the house, which were approved by the building department, thus approving the building permit. However, the applicant felt that the construction of the breezeway was denying her the reasonable use of her property, which is why the variance application is before you tonight. So the application shows plans for the accessory apartment, which shows that 2 parking spaces will be left in the garage, and there is a carport on the front of the house, which would make for 3 total parking spaces. And 2 parking spaces are required for the primary dwelling and 1 for the accessory apartment. Access to the garage is on a private driveway. It appears through imagery, and if you drive by, it appears as though the access is an alleyway, but this is actually a 10-foot utility easement that runs along the north side of the properties within this neighborhood, and it is treated like an alleyway, although it is not public access easement. So the applicant is legally accessing her garage on her private property. Then, just as a comment then here to the definition of an accessory apartment, it states in code that it is defined as 1 habitable room. There's not clear specifications in Title 15 or Building Code on how to interpret this statement, so I've interpreted 1 habitable room as space that is not separated by doors. So as you'll see in the application, that the accessory apartment is 2 floors but not separated by doors.
Any questions for administration?
So the easement, alleyway, explain that again.
Yeah, so if you look at the plat maps within the packet, you'll see that there is the 10-foot utility easement. So most properties have utility easements in the side yards or the backyards for
So it's a
sewer.
utility
Yeah.
easement, but they're still able to
So
come right up against that?
So it was within a utility easement on a property, the owner can use it for driveway, parking, anything that doesn't place a structure on top of the easement. And so this owner's using that area for a driveway. However, the confusing aspect is that not only does the owner use it, but other neighbors use it to access their properties, but that is illegal access.
It is legal access.
It is illegal.
Oh,
They are trespassing, but it has been used as an alleyway. So, yeah, and the clarification for that is just to state that the applicant is not using public access to get to her garage. She's using her own private property to get to her garage.
because that alleyway goes all the way down to another alleyway, cuts across. So all those alleyways.
Are all just utility easements, not public
And
access
so-
easements.
So we are trespassing if we walk down the alleyways, or
Correct,
we drive our bike down the alleyway?
technically.
But but they're not allowed to build on them. They can build up next to their property line, right?
Right, yeah, it's utility easements cannot build anything on top of the utility
Yeah, right.
easement.
Okay.
So now, did you have a question? Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing. Mr. Clerk, is there anyone signed in to speak?
Yes, first on the list is William and Marcia Vincent.
And he'll say whatever she says, so.
Would you please state your name and inside or outside city limits?
Marcia Vincent, 202 Marathon Drive, inside. We are actually neighbors. Our properties are next to each other at the 1702. And first of all, I want to thank you all for doing this. As a former employee of the city, I know it's difficult. And you are appreciated, even if you're not told. So we wanted to come tonight to reiterate the letter that we sent in, that we object to the granting of a variance for the resident at 1702 Resurrection Blvd. I'm sure there won't be any other objections because 3 of the properties that surround this 1702 property and ours are being used as bunkhouses, which are not R2 zoned, and the city is not enforcing that, so you won't have other objections, I'm sure. The R2 zone is 2-family, which, as Courtney said, apartment is allowed, but we object to that and the variance because, first of all, I think in the paperwork, one of the things that were stated is that they have a fence around the back, and building this breezeway would take away most of the backyard. Well, I'm very familiar with that property. My son owned it before the current owner. We have shoveled a lot of that backyard, and believe me, a breezeway would enhance that property greatly. And she also has, that backyard is 20 by 30, and there's also a front yard, so there is still access to yards. Our concern is that if the variance is granted, that the property could be used as more than the R2 rated for more than 2 families. That fence could easily be taken down if a variance was granted, and it could be added onto, used as a parking spot, additional families, who knows. But that house, I think it was also stated, is historical value because the garage is newer than the house. That house has been altered more than 3 times, inside and out. So the historical value, I don't think is a real argument there, but then again, that's for you to look into. So we are concerned about the apartment, but we can't do anything about it. We've already had people parking on our property looking for this property, this apartment, which was last fall. So to me, asking for the variance is putting the cart before the horse. Anyway, like I said, the yard is 30 by 20, so the breezeway wouldn't really affect that, except for it would keep the ice and snow off of her yard, because there are doors straight across from the house to the garage, which wouldn't affect any building. The doors are already there. So, like I said, we can't stop the apartment being builded, but we can ask that the P&Z adhere to current code. And as stated in the paperwork, this doesn't cause any financial duress. It's probably going to be a write-off, but it does not, granting that keeps our community within the zoning, the current code that it is now. So appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is anyone else signed in to speak?
Next on the list is Zach and Joanna Johnson.
I just signed it, Chris. I don't really have anything to say.
Okay,
We're just here to
You're just
support.
here to be supportive to me.
okay, noted.
We
Thank
won't put
you.
you on the spot.
Is anyone else signed in to speak?
Next on the list is actually the applicant, but according to our format, the citizens go first and the applicant goes last. So with that in mind, next on the list is Kevin Quitberg.
Yeah, be on a different subject altogether.
Okay, this is specifically for this resolution, for this variance.
That's
Okay, so that leaves the applicant, Denise Cerniglia.
Yeah. Hi, thanks for meeting with me here on this really nice sunny day. I know that it's hard.
And Denise, go ahead for the record, state your name and inside or outside city limits.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Denise Cerniglia. I am the owner of the house, inside city limits. Thanks for listening to my request. I know you probably get a lot of them, and I'm sure it's really hard to kind of filter through everybody's needs. In the application, I kind of explained why I'm building this apartment. It was never intended to be an apartment. It was my husband's workspace. He passed away. I'm trying to make a long-term apartment for a community member. I've had 7 people email me asking to move into this apartment. I'm turning it into a beautiful space. It isn't the bunkhouse next door. I live next door to the bunkhouse as well. I totally understand what my neighbors are trying to convey here, and they do have history with this home, but so do I. So when I purchased the home, the reason why I purchased it was that it was a survivor of the earthquake. It had a garage that my husband could run his glass blowing business in, and it had a private fenced-in backyard that I could contain my dogs, have some privacy, and have a nice life here. My situation's changed now. I'm trying to get a second income. I'm not turning it into an Airbnb, even though it is zoned for that. If I was going to turn it into an Airbnb, I certainly wouldn't have created a garage space for the person that's going to be living in that garage, or I'm sorry, in the apartment. I would have turned it into another bedroom and just racked it up just like everybody else in this town. I'm not trying to knock anybody on how they make money. What I'm trying to do is to turn that space into something beautiful that a person can live there year-round, so help support me, to be there to help me to do stuff. I mean, we had 100+ inches of snow this year. I am looking to have a space in my yard that is private. And I understand that my neighbors have said that this wouldn't cause a financial duress, but it will. It's going to cost over $10,000. The house, it was built in 1954. The garage was built in 2006, as I'm sure they're aware of. They're not even the same height. The doors are not even adjacent. This would be creating this giant roofed structure that's 12 feet from door to door. I mean, it's going to be something that's going to detract from the value of my home, because nobody wants to look out in their backyard at a roof. It is gorgeous outside. I've been sitting out there all day. I have a memorial garden that I've set up with my husband's ashes in an urn and some plants, and that's going to totally ruin that. And I know that that's not like in the city code, but this is the reality of my situation, and that what I'm asking is that a breezeway, it says like a breezeway. I talked with the former building inspector. He said the code is not well defined. What is a connecting wall? I'm not a person who's non-compliant. I work with federal grant money for the last 25 years. I mean, I understand rules. I understand enforcing them. I understand why we're doing this. We want to keep our community like a community of citizens, not just a bunch of people that don't live here. But I live here year-round. I've lived in that house year-round. I'm trying to turn it into something nice. And this is going to prevent me from being able to keep that apartment at a reasonable cost, because now my budget is totally inflated. It's not going to be, I'm not going to be able to complete it on time. And it's, I mean, I have people asking me, when's this thing going to be ready? Like, there is a housing crisis here. And I don't know anybody else in this town who's building a long-term apartment right now. I don't know about you guys, but I'm working with people that are living in tents. And that's fine. Some of these people, they don't live here year-round, but people that live here year-round deserve to have a nice mold-free place that is safe, comfortable, and I guarantee you way better neighbors than the people next door, because they have been challenged. I'm 100% with you. Like, I'm not
Denise, you need to talk to us.
Okay, sorry, but
You can
that is a
talk them
whole
over
other
the
story.
fence.
So, I'm just trying to make friends here. I don't want to make enemies with my neighbors, but I'm trying to it's not like I'm trying to get out of like a city code. Or I certainly wouldn't take down my fence and turn it into a parking spot or add more family housing. Like, that's not what I'm doing here. So I'm going to shut up now, because that's probably more than I wanted to say. And I'm not trying to be emotional about it, but it is an emotional topic. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Is anyone in the audience wishing to speak? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. And I'm going to do a little educational moment here. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, and quasi-judicial matters such as a variance, conditional use permit, and appeals of actions and determinations of the administrative officials are decisions that have a direct effect on the rights and liabilities of a single person or small group of identified persons. Determination on Resolution 2024-013 will be made on whether the required variance procedures in our Code 1510-325 variances have been met. Rules for ensuring the fairness of the process apply. Commissioners may not receive or engage in ex parte contact with the applicant, other parties interested in the application, or members of the public concerning the application or issues presented in the application. If ex parte contact occurred, commissioners must disclose contact names and substance of communications, and then state whether or not they can give an unbiased view to all the evidence presented. So at this time, I would like to ask the commissioners if you did have contact, communication with the applicant or neighbors or other private citizens about this variance.
Can I go first? Yes, I was contacted by Commissioner Chardonnay, who called me and shared his thoughts on the variance. The discussion was, he felt that basically he was pointing out money is not a reason for a variance, and he was also raised a question about the historical character of the house, which he did not feel was met in his opinion.
And just for a point, Mr. Clerk, another commissioner is not a private citizen, so does he need to declare ex parte with a commissioner?
It's hard to say. I mean, Commissioner Charbonneau is also a private citizen, you know, on
Was he
some level.
speaking as a private citizen or a commissioner? That's just so grave, we can't go there.
It's already been disclosed, so
Yeah.
there's,
Okay.
that's that.
Yeah,
I feel
there's a lot
like
of gray
it's an
here.
opinion he would express publicly
If he was
here,
sitting here.
and so I just felt like it should be
Right.
shared.
That's good, okay. Anyone else?
Yes, the applicant is a coworker and friend of mine, so I have communicated with her about this.
And I think you need to disclose the substance of your communication so that we all know. That's, the ex parte means you're excluded. It's like, we did this. So this is a way to make sure everyone has the same information.
Of course. I
Okay.
would say it was pretty similar to the conversation of exactly what the applicant shared on the stand.
Okay.
About,
Okay,
about the variance.
okay. And did Commissioner Charbonneau contact you as well?
Yes.
Same-
He
same
left me a
thing?
voicemail expressing his opposition, and I also talked to Commissioner Ullman about
Okay,
this since I knew he would be absent.
okay.
And he, I would say he was pro or con at this point since he didn't look a lot into it.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Charbonneau called me, gave me his opinion. Didn't ask me for mine necessarily. Just wanted to, because he was going to be gone, and he just wanted to make sure certain things were considered. And I also heard from the neighbor and Marcia, talked with her, and it was pretty much, the conversation was pretty much what she disclosed here at the meeting today as well. It was in her letter.
Okay. And Commissioner Charbonneau also contacted me and basically gave me the same information. Okay, thank you. So now we move into the discussion. So comments from the commission on this variance. Who would like to go first?
I can go ahead. You know, on the surface, I just wanted to say that it seems our code's kind of crazy. That I think in order for something to be legal, you have to have a breezeway in a certain district where we're struggling for housing. And the fact that this breezeway construction has occurred several times in that neighborhood speaks for the need for additional housing, which is being constrained by the area's zoning. However, that's not really up for discussion at this time, but I just want to make that point. But I think the main arguments in this variance come down to whether it should be granted based on whether the connection, breezeway connection, would alter the house's historic character, is how it's being applied in my interpretation. And looking at the house, it has been altered from its original construction just from my own observations of the outside of the house. I can't speak for the interior. In the fact that there's at least modern siding on it, and it does not have what I would think of as historic aesthetic. It also is not listed in Seward's list of historical properties, to the best of my research. My question is, what history would be preserving, what would we be preserving in allowing this variance, and how is it different from the surrounding properties of a similar age? That's kind of my comments.
Okay.
Yeah, agree with that. And I know that in that neighborhood there is other homes that had added on accessory dwellings, and so then we're of course required to add that breezeway. But this is unique in that accessory garage already exists, and so I find that a little differentiating. And also that we do want to encourage housing, and it is an R2 with single family and 2-family residences allowed as a use. And I think it is admirable of the applicant to go through the permitting process because life and safety is important, and I don't want to encourage people to just go ahead and build secret apartments, right? We shut it down because of a breezeway that we're requiring to be built. Yes, as someone who owned a property with, non-permitted building on it, it's a real pain later, but it could be done, and then it would, be a rental property and also allowed use. So I think that the variance should be granted.
So, I guess I'm a little befuddled why originally there was a breezeway design that came with the building permit, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's how it came. And then there was a decision not to do that. And so they understood the codes, and I guess the other thing I'm concerned about is this will now open up the door for everybody in that neighborhood to have this type of variance. And we actually have a breezeway on ours, although we don't have an apartment, but we had to go through this exact same thing. But it ended up, it isn't neither here nor there, but I just, as I walk through and see how this neighborhood, I actually live next door. I grew up in the house next door to them. And as I walk through that neighborhood now, and I see a lot of other extra buildings, and people are either in dry cabins or different things. There's a true lack of enforcement altogether anyway there, and I just don't think that this is helping enhance or make the neighborhood be in compliance. There's a lot of other issues that are going on there as well, and so I just can't agree with the variance for this.
I would like to direct the commission to our packet because we need to be very careful to provide findings. Because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, it means that the applicant could appeal this to the Board of Adjustment, which is the council serving as a Board of Adjustment. And if the applicant doesn't like that, she can go to the Superior Court. So it's really important to have solid findings so that they don't just say, well, they didn't like it. That won't, the judge at the Superior Court level will just throw that out. So that's why we have to be really careful with our findings. So I appreciate what the packet did, what community development did on page 12 of our packet. It goes through the conditions that we need to find findings for. So the first condition is the use is consistent with all of the general conditions required for a conditional use permit. And our code, this is not a conditional use permit, but our code under variances said, well, everything under conditional use permits has to be checked off too. So they kind of twine together, which can be confusing. So I find that this has been met, as did administration. According to the land uses allowed table, an accessory apartment is allowed within a 2-family residential zoning district outright. So that I think we could say yes. And Mr. Clerk, if you could advise me, do you think it would be appropriate to make a motion for each of these findings and vote, or to do it all at once? Go through all these findings and then have a major vote?
I don't think we should be voting on individual findings.
Okay.
It's too much.
Okay, let's just get concurrence. Do you agree that that's true? This is an allowed use in that R2 zoning district?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll start out easy. The value of the adjoining property will not be significantly impaired. and the finding says, this condition has been met. Granting a variance from the requirement to attach the garage to a single-family home with a covered breezeway will not impair the value of the adjoining properties. So this says with a covered breezeway. And I would say, actually, this doesn't apply. With or without a covered breezeway, property values are through the roof, and I don't think that breezeway, if it was there or not, would make one bit of difference to the value of the surrounding properties.
I think that's subjective. I think it
It
depends.
is subjective.
It depends on the person. I mean, I'm glad we built our breezeway. It
Right.
saved a lot of snow removal, and it really, for...
But would it
winter time-
impact the
Well, it doesn't impair it. It would probably, I'd say it would
Adjoining.
enhance it.
Impair adjoining property.
It says, would it impair the value of the adjoining properties?
Adjoining properties, you mean their
Right.
neighbors?
Right. With or
Difference.
without, I don't think it would matter either way.
No.
So I would like to put down NA for B. C, the proposed use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. And it says this condition has been met. The proposal is in harmony with the 2030 comprehensive plan to promote residential and commercial development within the city of Seward and its vicinity in accordance with community values, encourage development of new housing in Seward, and support a range of housing choices that meet the needs of people in various income and age groups. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Especially with the desire for
Okay.
year-round.
And the only thing I would say to that is that there's no restriction if she would like to do a short-term rental. And this is all about housing, which she wants to do. But if she wanted to do a short-term rental, then that would not necessarily be supported by
Right.
these statements, because that's different from housing.
And that can easily happen.
Well, yeah, it's totally up to her. She just needs to apply for a permit, and she's good to go because it is allowed in that zone. Let's see, I have something on that. Well, I guess that finding would be met if it were housing. So let's go with that. Yes to that one. D, public services and facilities are adequate to serve the proposed use. City water, sewer, and electricity are connected. So that's pretty obvious. She's good to go on that one. Finding B, the proposed use will not be harmful to public safety, health, or welfare. All construction will abide by the International Fire and Building Code. That's pretty straightforward. And then we get back, that satisfies the conditional use permit requirements. And now we're back to the special variance requirements. Number 2, special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land or structures involved and which are not applicable to other lands and structures in the same district. So my finding is that this is not true. This is not supported. There's nothing unusual or peculiar about this property. The homes in Clearview Subdivision are built on similar, relatively flat land. A detached garage is not unusual or peculiar, and all of the properties in this block have a 10-foot utility easement in their side or backyards that is commonly used as an alley. So I find that D is not supported. Okay, so that one's not supported.
Number 2.
Number 2, D2. The next one, D3, the special conditions and circumstances have not been caused by actions of the applicant. So I don't think that's applicable either. she has a house, she has a detached garage, and that's just the way it is. I don't think that one's really applicable. D4, financial hardship or inconvenience shall not be a reason for granting a variance. So she did say that the construction of a breezeway would be very expensive. And she did say it's inconvenient to have a breezeway and that it interferes with her light. Both of those concerns are not something that we can use as a finding. So I would say that has not been met. Financial hardship or inconvenience shall not be a reason. So I guess it has been met. Should not.
It's not qualifying.
It's not qualifying. Thank you. 5, other non-conforming land use or structures shall not be a reason for granting a variance. So we heard that there are others, but it doesn't matter. And if the fear is that there'll be more of these, that doesn't matter. That's not something we can rule on. 6, a variance shall be the minimum variance necessary to permit the reasonable use of the land and structure. So she would like a variance to not build a breezeway. So I don't think this really applies because a 0 breezeway would be the minimum that she would like. So I would say this doesn't really apply in this case. Okay. 7, a variance shall not be granted which will permit a land use in a district that use is otherwise prohibited.
That's it.
So the variance does not permit a land use in a district in which that use is otherwise prohibited. An accessory apartment is allowed outright in a 2-family residential zoning district. So that one's okay. And that's where our packet ends. However, I found a few more in that variance thing. Let me see if I can find those.
I have a question. Is there a way to, is she not able to rent at all until either this variance is issued
Right.
or she has a breezeway?
So she cannot rent in a detached garage, attached accessory structure. The structure has to be considered attached to the house. And we have this crazy ruling, which is all over the United States. I was amazed. If a breezeway is connected between the attached, the accessory structure and the home, it's considered just like it was right next door. So she can't legally rent that garage until she's connected it to the house.
However, the place itself does meet fire code and everything. It's just this variance issue or the breezeway issue. So is there any way that we can give her a timeline to allow it for a certain time period?
I don't think so. I don't think that's part of our
Is there anything,
Part of our
any adjustments that
jurisdiction.
can be made because she's ready to go? It's turnkey, but there's just this breezeway.
So you mean allow her to get a renter in there?
Yeah.
Until the breezeway can be built?
Yeah.
Oh. I
Well,
don't think that will work with
she's-
the permitting
yeah,
process.
You raised a
because
good
that's part of
question.
it.
So
Because she had
Could
a
I-
building permit.
could I suspend the rules and ask Edmund something?
Sure.
So would this variance, in effect, be allowing her to rent an apartment that's not attached to the house?
Yes, if this variance was granted, then the garage remained detached. The accessory apartment would be built in the detached garage and she could legally rent it out.
Thank you. So I found that did not comply with our code, which was to, in volume 1, 3.2.1, Community values support fair and consistent interpretation of code. So I felt by allowing this variance where she could rent an accessory apartment in a detached garage was not fair and consistent interpretation of code. A few other things that were required by the CUP were that a dimensioned plot plans show the location of all existing and proposed buildings or alterations and such data as may be required. And I found the application was very incomplete, and for that reason it was confusing. The as-built does not show the garage, and no other complete plan was submitted. The alteration of the garage to include the accessory apartment doesn't show the location in the garage, it just shows the apartment. But I'm led to believe that the upstairs apartment part is over the middle, but it just shows the edge, so you don't see that the garage continues underneath it. And there's no north arrow. It was just kind of confusing to try to visualize how this thing worked in the garage. The contractor's contact information and city and state license information is missing, as is the building permit number. So I found that the requested variance, subject to the above findings, does not satisfy the criteria for granting a variance per our code on variances, and does not authorize the administration to issue a variance to construct an accessory apartment in a detached garage without a breezeway. And to address the applicant's concerns, I don't believe it has to go from the top of the roof to the top of the roof. It could be above the door to above the door, and
But they're not, they don't align, it sounded like, yeah.
okay.
They're also not on the same.
Right, because she said it would have to be 12 feet.
Each other.
Okay.
The buildings are two totally different sizes, sorry.
Well, that's a
How about-
design.
how about the,
design
uh,
well, we can't contact the public right now.
Well, I guess if I went there with a measuring tape, but you had the fence, you could make a breezeway along the fence and extend out to cover.
Right.
So you could connect it, you could connect it that way. It may not be door to door.
I think that the design of the breezeway is not up
Take
to
it out,
us.
and then you just have it over there.
So you'd go like this, like an L shape,
Yeah.
like Legos, just for the heck of it.
That would be considered
Seems-
financial hardship or inconvenience, which cannot be considered for variance.
Sure, it just seems a little bit absurd, because again, that building is not a new build and has been there since 2006, so I don't know. And it is allowed to have an apartment in there, so
Right.
I guess.
But when we look through the findings that we're restricted to, we can't let financial hardship or inconvenience be a factor. So it's between her builder, and the building inspector to come up with a suitable breezeway so that the accessory apartment is in a building that's
There's a lot
attached
of
to the
options.
house.
She'd have to get it to the builder.
Yeah, but that's up to them. We don't design breezeways.
I've got some ideas.
I'm gonna start.
Right. So they do have to, they have to comply with all these findings. And a variance is for a hardship. And I don't see that this is a hardship.
I thought that was for not a hardship.
No, it's for a hardship. I need help because I have peculiar, unusual situation that I need relief to do this. And I just don't see that supported by these findings. I should read the intent of a variance. When the literal enforcement of this chapter would deprive a property owner of the reasonable use of their real property, A variance would allow for the relaxation of the development requirements of this chapter to provide relief. So the applicant has reasonable use of her property. And if she builds a breezeway, she would be able to do this additional thing, which would be to provide housing, which is a very much appreciated goal. But I don't believe it's depriving her of reasonable use of her property, and that's the intent. She has the options of building a breezeway and having the apartment, not building a breezeway and having a garage, and full use of her little yard in between. So I don't believe it's depriving her of reasonable use of her property. That makes sense.
I hear what you're saying,
We have restrictions.
but yeah, I don't know. It just still feels absurd to me, so.
That's why it's important to go through these findings and see what we have.
So, maybe this is for staff, there is absolutely no way we can give her some condition for this year, and if it's not built within a certain time, then she has to quit renting.
No, this resolution is just for
We
for
can't
either
amend it.
granting the variance for constructing the breezeway or denying it.
So, how do I combine all those findings into a motion?
Well, we have a
No, the
motion.
motion's
We
on the
table
floor.
it.
It is on the-
We're just
it's on the
discussing
floor.
it, so now
Okay.
it's
If
ready.
you're done with your discussion, we could vote.
Okay.
Is it possible for me to say one more thing?
Not at this time unless we suspend the rules. Would the commission like to suspend the rules?
Sure.
Okay. Keep it short.
I just wanted to say
Oh,
that.
come up to the mic so everyone can hear
Do
you.
I have to say my name again?
Sure.
Okay. I'm Denise Cerniglia, I'm the property owner. I just wanted to say that when the building inspector came, there was never mention about this breezeway being needed. The construction started at that point. I was gone, my mother passed away, I had a lot of things going on. I came back to an email from Courtney saying, oh, we can't do this. So now I have an apartment being built. I have a breezeway I can't afford that's gonna cover up my backyard on a beautiful sunny day. And I just wanted you to think about, how would you feel about your backyard if I came and told you to put a roof over it? And then also that the house is not even like remotely close to the size of the garage. The doors are not in alignment. It would pretty much just annihilate the whole area. So it is very much an inconvenience to my use of my real property. Yes, I do have a front yard, but it is not fenced in, and fencing it would cost a lot of money, which I obviously am not in a position to do that either at this point. Really would like to use this money to install a new boiler into my home, or something more practical. I've also talked with my neighbors who have mentioned that it creates a flow path between the two buildings because they're so close together. It is a fire hazard. I'm concerned that this is going to make my property insurance go up, that this is going to be something that is, the way that he explained it is that you have one structure on fire, now you have two structures on fire, and that this is a problem. And I know that there's, and I guess the thing that I'm looking for from you guys is to, the breezeway, like that was submitted with the application by my contractor, I had never seen it. It's not a picture of my home. It was in order to try to get things going. As I mentioned, I was out of town. What can we do other than a roof over this one area of the space? And that is what's not defined, and that's why I applied for the variance. I really feel strongly about putting a roof over my backyard. I think that nobody's going to buy that house when I sell it eventually, and it's also going to cause the price to go up on this apartment, which is already unaffordable for people to live here. I understand that like we have to be consistent, but what I'm also asking is for you guys to be practical. And that building a roof, I get it, and like it is a thing. I had to Google it. What is a breezeway? Because well, you know what it is usually? It connects $1 million house to a 4-car garage. It's not like what I have between my two houses. You know, my two houses, or my house and my garage, it's a very small space. And so I just want to just make that aware that this was a what? What are you talking about? I can't build this garage. We're already doing demolition in here, and we've got this project underway. I've already spent $25,000. This wasn't discussed by the building inspector. It was an afterthought. So that is why that was in the packet. It wasn't that I was aware of that this was something that was like, oh, well, we got to keep the project moving type of thing, you know, from the contractor, who I like, but he messed up, because this should have been something that I was informed about prior to me, because I probably wouldn't have done it. And that's all I got. So.
Thank you. We can't, you can speak at the end, 5 minutes, but it'll be after the decision's been made. Sorry. Well, we go back to our constraints serving as quasi-judicial body, and we can't consider financial and inconvenience as a reason to approve or deny. And I'm not sure what a breezeway is either, but maybe it doesn't have to connect up to doors. Maybe it just needs to say this building is part of that building and make a tool shed out of it or something. I don't know. That's up to the building inspector. But these are all inconveniences and financial considerations that we are not allowed to consider, unfortunately. Are we ready to vote?
Are we ready for the vote?
Okay, call for the vote, please.
Okay, and just for the record, P&Z rules, a majority of the commissioners present. So if there's 4 commissioners, a vote of 3 to 1 would pass, which is different from city council rules.
And can you clarify a yes vote means and a no vote means?
So a yes vote would be to approve of the variance. And approve of resolution 2024-013, which is granting the variance.
Thank you. We're ready for roll call.
Okay, voting on the approval of resolution 2024-013. Hornstedt?
No.
Fairhay?
Yes.
Hubbard?
No.
And Griswold?
No.
Okay, that motion has failed.
Okay, thank you. And now, next on our agenda is item 9, unfinished business. There is none. 10, new business. B, other new business. Recommendations to direct staff to bring the flooding of properties south of Dickgraff Road and propose solutions to the City Council as a discussion item. And this is on page 32 of our packet. Could we hear from administration, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. At our last work session, we had Nick Chapman, who is the Service Area Program Manager for the Seward Bear Creek Flood Service Area, come in and do a presentation, provide some information for us on flood mitigation efforts for Scheffler Creek. And in that work session, it was also discussed of some flooding issues in Forest Acres, just south of Dickgraff Road. And we heard from an individual who owns property in that neighborhood on 2615 Birch Street, that ever since Dickgraff Road was constructed, that her property has had flooding issues. And Nick Chapman and Danny went out and did a site inspection to kind of see what the issues were, and Nick took some elevation points, which are shown in a graphic on page 35, to show, you know, the house is slightly lower than the elevation of Dickcraft Road, but the ditch along Dickcraft Road, you can see are the numbers in the 1003, 1004 there, and that there is, so this discrepancy with the elevations in that area is kind of slowing down the drainage of water when there are significant rainfall, which is causing the flooding issues. And so Nick's proposed solution would be for the city to dig a ditch along Dickcraft Road, and then to have the property owners raise the elevation of their yards to promote drainage of rainfall water to this ditch on Dickcraft Road, which would then take the water out. So this item on our agenda is for the commission to discuss this proposed solution, and if they have any other solutions they want to propose, but the main motion would be to recommend that staff bring this item for discussion at a city council meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for administration? Okay, discussion?
Carol, you went out and looked at this property, right?
I did. Did anyone else go see?
Is the other domiciles also impacted just as badly?
So on our map, it just highlights one property,
Right.
but so on, I guess I don't have a number there. But the map that says flooding mitigation proposal location map, that just outlines one of the properties. The property to the north, I talked to that property owner, and he said
2618.
on Diamond.
Okay.
On Diamond Road. He said he doesn't get flooding because he actually built his property up, which is good support for Nick Chapman's recommendation for Birch Street. The one that's outlined, 2615 Birch Street, to fill in her backyard. It's kind of a slough back there. So if she built that up, he felt it would help reduce the flooding. But also, I kind of disagree with his recommendation to slope it towards Birch Street. I'd rather have him take that north corner and have a ditch on city property to connect it up with this new ditch that's going to be done. Because the properties across Birch Street are also impacted by flooding. And then as you go west along Dickcraft Road, that property there right next to just west of Diamond, that one sometimes gets flooded. So it impacts a little farther than the red line ditch goes. I was hoping Nick could be here to answer some questions, but I want to make sure that the culverts that go under Dickcraft and Maple are adequate. First of all, are they there? And then are they adequate when there is flooding? And that would help to direct all this water into this new ditch that will help drain everything along Dickcraft Road.
Madam Chair, I did speak with Nick after our meeting just to verify these questions, and he told me that there are culverts under Diamond and Maple, but that they would need to be cleaned out.
Okay, maintenance. Okay, that's good to know they're there, and I hope they're adequate size to handle that flood water. Because everything has to be directed into this new ditch and take it to our snow dump site. Otherwise, what's the point? So other than that, I do agree that this solution is worth trying. And if it doesn't work, then we're back to the drawing board, but I think it's a good step that will hopefully be the solution. Dig a ditch, encourage the landowners to fill where they can, and then drain their properties across the city property to the ditch, and culvert maintenance.
Which one is a city property?
All along DeGraff Road.
Okay.
And 2618 Birch Street.
Right, right. That was part of the condition for putting this levee in, that no building would occur right next to the levee because it is in a floodplain, basically. And we don't know if it's rainwater, or we know the water table is really high, and so there may be springs, there may be underwater flow, but a ditch would probably be a good solution, a good solution to try first.
Okay. Is there any money involved here, or is it just kind of considered maintenance?
Yeah, I guess we don't
That's
worry
not our
about
deal.
that. Yeah, right. We'll pass it on to council
Okay.
to figure out how to pay for that work.
Okay.
But hopefully it won't be very expensive or involved. So, do we agree that's our recommendation, to pass on to council?
Yes.
Okay. Do you
Yeah,
need a
we
vote
agree.
on that, Mr. Clerk?
We don't need to vote if there's no objections, unless you wanted to very specifically put like a short statement, as a motion to approve. But this might be more complicated than
Right,
like a single sentence or two. so-
right, yeah.
No, it's fine to just leave it as a unanimous consent, no objection.
Okay.
So all of his proposed solutions is this it, or has he got something more detailed?
That's it.
Yeah, the proposed solution in this agenda statement would be that the property owners would need to add fill to their backyards, and then have a slight slope with that fill to direct water towards the drainage ditch along Dick Graff, and then the city would deepen the ditch along Dick Graff. If we want to be more specific, I did have further conversations with Nick, and he mentioned that the ditch could be dug starting at around less than 4 feet deep, and then maintain the grade of Dick Graff Road as it goes southeast along Dick Graff. When specifics as far as depth and stuff, I imagine would probably be better discussed when city council is directing public works or whoever to do the work.
Right. I'm not a flood train manager, so I would defer to Nick's recommendations. But I also want to include maintenance of those culverts. Was that part of your list?
No, yeah, so we can add in our proposed mitigation efforts to do the maintenance on the ditches, or the culverts on Maple and Diamond.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you won't be compromising other properties, the one just northwest of that, right? It's not gonna impact them if they bring in fill? Is that gonna, I just wanna make sure we're not gonna be, sometimes that happens, you think you're fixing something on your property, but then you're impacting others, so.
Right, and that would be, in order for them to bring in fill, they would need to get a floodplain permit, both from the River Center with the borough and from the city, and they would need to demonstrate that it would not be impacting other properties.
Okay.
And I noticed in your wording, it said that they will do that. Could you change that to encourage the property owners to do that? That'd be better. Then, if they want a slough in their backyard, they can, but if they want to fill it, they could go through that process. Have some options. Okay, all done with that one? Let's move on to informational items and reports. A reminder of meetings, our work session on June 18th will be at 6 p.m. And
Chair Griswold,
Yeah.
excuse me, I think we skipped over a new business item.
Did we? Oh,
discuss work
we did.
session
That kind of
topic.
ties right in, doesn't it? So under other new business, number 2 is discuss the work session topics for June 18th. And let's hear from administration.
Thank you. On June 18th, we already have scheduled a presentation from the borough regarding the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. So that will be the beginning of our meeting. It should take 30 minutes to an hour presentation and then questions, of course. And then we would like to discuss our priority list for the second half of the year. So we have quite a list of topics that have either been brought up by commissioners or administration. And so we're going to bring that list to all of you at this work session and have you kind of prioritize which ones we want to tackle first and just order that for the rest of the year. And then for a third topic on June 18th, we have a couple items that have been brought up. I think first on that list has been the discussion of cannabis use within our land uses allowed table. So that would be an option if the commission wants to do that as our third topic, or sign code, trying to wrap that up. The housing issues, I think that would probably be best for a whole work session, but it's an option, or comprehensive plan discussion, just brainstorming and getting your feedback on gathering statistical information for that update. And then, of course, the subdivision code, which we started on as well. So what would be the wishes of the commission for the third topic on June 18th?
Of all these topics, which is the most pressing to Community Development Department?
Housing.
It is a difficult...
We're waiting for Nicole to be available. Nicole Lawrence?
Because there is a presentation that we would like Nicole to give, and the housing discussion would be probably best for its own whole work session. I think I could come up with an argument for all of them to be pressing,
Okay.
but
Okay.
yeah.
So you don't think the presentation, the coming up with a priority list and the cannabis uses, isn't that enough to take care of a work session, the next work session?
Well, we're so the cannabis use would be an option for a third topic.
Oh,
if
a
that's-
third
yeah.
topic. Oh, okay.
So the two that are definitely going to happen is the presentation for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, and then looking at our priority list. And then all of you can choose a third topic.
Okay. Well, I think since it's very current, I think the cannabis use is in real time, and it's worth starting the discussion because we have other communities to compare with, that have, since this is again the first year that on-site consumption has been allowed. I would vouch for that, and also given that the housing issue, like you said, needs probably a big fat work session of its own. So, and we can look at some other things. And would that also coincide with the subdivision? I guess not, that's something different, but it's still kind of meaningful, I guess, as far as how we're, as a community, going to approach subdivisions. Housing, it's kind of the same thing, a little bit.
Yeah, they definitely coincide. I mean, they could be on the same work session in the future, I'm sure. But yeah, they're kind of they are kind of different in the sense of yeah, the housing discussion I think would be more of just talking about various options we have
Right.
to address housing issues in the subdivision code, although it can affect
Yeah.
housing issues, would be more for updating the actual wording in the code.
It's kind of like a matter of utilizing our space, and a brainstorm of how we're utilizing space in which areas, right?
Mhm.
Where the hot spots are and where the choke points are and that kind of thing.
Right.
Would the commission be willing to do cannabis as the third topic?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that for the third topic.
Okay.
Thank you. Now we can move on to informational items and reports. So we will have that work session on June 18th at 6 p.m. and we'll have our next regular meeting on July 2nd at 7 p.m. And now it is time for citizen comments. Would anyone in the audience wish to speak? Please approach the microphone and state your name and inside or outside city limits. You have 5 minutes.
My name is Kevin Quitberg. I'm inside the city limits. So I want to talk a little bit since I was up here. I was able to talk to several people about drilling on the Forest Acres land where I have a lot. I went to DEC in Soldotna and talked to them. I talked to the tax assessor in Soldotna. To a person, they were very surprised that Seward wouldn't allow lots in lieu of city water. The Department of Environmental Conservation, I took the plat map from the assessor and they pointed out that that was perfectly doable. There was no problem in doing that. I checked with Anchorage. Anchorage is one of 2 municipalities in Alaska that regulates drilling, so one of only 2. What they require is a plat map that shows your setback, which is a state requirement of 100 feet from a septic. But they also require on that plat map that you show your neighbor's septic and keep a 100-foot setback from that septic. Other than that, you can drill in Anchorage. If you look at Sullivan Drilling's website on their gallery, they will show a drilling rig in downtown Anchorage drilling a water well right next to a big building. In Anchorage, you are allowed to drill a water well for a car wash, for a laundromat, for a nursery, and that's what they do. You're not required to connect to the main, even if it comes by your property, although you are required to have a setback from a sewer main for a well. They do require that you have some place to discharge your wastewater, be it a septic or a sewer main, prior to issuing a permit. But they do allow septics in downtown Anchorage. If you drive south of Anchorage and you look up to your left by Potter's Marsh, all those houses up there are on septics and wells. The city said they're not going to spend the money to run the mains, which was another thing that the assessor was very surprised at in Soldotna yesterday, was the concept that Seward requires or wants to require individual landowners to pay for mains, both water and sewer. That was a surprise to them. They assumed, as I always assumed, that cities took upon themselves that responsibility when they annexed ground. They ran the mains. Landowners were always responsible for laterals, but cities were responsible for mains. One thing that the engineer with the DEC pointed out, on some of those lots on Forest Acres are half-acre lots, but I pointed out to her that several of those half-acre lots were bought by one individual and then joined, so they were 1 acre. And she said that that may need to be changed legally so that at some point in the future they couldn't be subdivided and then you lose your setback. So that would take away the dividing line between the 2 half-acre lots. So I thought that was a good observation on her point. But none of them could see any reason why Seward would hold up building waiting on municipal water when they have 1 acre and adjoining half-acre lots that meet all the setback requirements. So that was one reason when I brought up the property valuation with the assessor on my property valuation at $78,500. And I told the assessor at that point that my property basically was worthless to me. And they dropped my assessed value from $78,500 to $600. Now, there's no reason that every one of the lot owners there can't appeal their tax valuation and get that same treatment, because nobody can build. The land is worthless. So, that's it. I've got it done in 4 minutes. So I have time for a question, if you want to ask me a question.
Would you like to suspend the rules so we can ask questions?
Sure.
Okay. Fire away.
Do you have a question? Do you have a question?
Well, I think I really appreciate this information. At our previous work session, we took up subdivision regulations, which mostly mirror what the borough does because we just make recommendations. And subsequent to that, council gave us authority over the whole thing, not just parts of it. But one of the things we were discussing is there was an inconsistency where if you were within 200 feet of a sewer line, you had to connect up, but it didn't say anything about city water. So it's like, well, this should be the same thing. So we do have similar property across the bay where there's never going to be, well, I shouldn't say never, but unlikely that there will be sewer and water. So they were allowed to do septic and wells.
Right.
And you are in a neighborhood that's this side of the bay, and it's like, why doesn't it have these services? It doesn't.
The city approved my septic last year. So I have a septic.
That's cool.
And the city installed power for me, so I have power. All I need is a well.
Right.
There is no regulation, so it says I can't drill a well. So I could call Derek, aptly named for a driller, with Frostline Drilling, and say, Derek, can you come over and drill my well Monday? And he could do that, but it still wouldn't work from a building permit. So I can't get a building permit without city water.
Okay.
So, also I talked to Rick Barker of Barker Drilling, and he actually drilled one of the Seward wells, and there is some concern in Seward. They say they highly disfavor wells because they want to protect their aquifer. And he said all of the Forest Acres lots are downslope from the city's aquifers. And to the best of his knowledge, water still did run downhill. So he said that was a non-starter. Alaska, kind of interesting, 665,370 square miles, and Seward is 13.96 square miles of land, not including the water, because Seward takes the city under the bay as well. So it looks like Seward with their 13.96 square miles is totally out of sync with the entirety of the remainder of Alaska as far as water goes. So that's some of the things I found out. But I would suggest looking at the gallery on Sullivan Drilling in Anchorage.
Could you spell that name?
Sullivan, Cole, C-O-L-E, Cole Sullivan, he runs it.
Okay.
S-U-L-L-I-V-A-N.
Okay.
And the gallery page will show that derrick right downtown next to a multi-story building in Anchorage. Quite interesting. And Anchorage has the tightest rules of any place in Alaska. But you can drill a well even if you've got mains coming by your house. So some people do it. My son in Eagle River has both well and septic on about 1/3 of an acre. So they do it. Chugiak, Eagle River. By the way, Anchorage is 1,707 square miles. It's the 4th largest city in the United States in geographic area.
You've done a lot of research. I appreciate that.
I have. I have spent hours and I've spent thousands of dollars. So that's kind of where it's at. So I should be moving into a house right now.
Yeah.
Stephen Soul basically told me that my lot was one of 4 lots that were not included in the 1977 replat. And then that's how I got permission to put the septic in. But then everything shut down and I was shut down.
Could you explain about the replat? So you don't have deed restrictions on your property?
No, there's 4 properties that do not have deed restrictions. That's lot AY, mine, AX, I believe it's AZ and BA. Those are non-deed restricted lots.
Do you know why those other lots were deed restricted?
I have no idea why they were included and these weren't.
Back in 1977.
Right. But my attorney contacted the city about that, and the city, through their attorney, said that they wanted to consider all the lots as one rather than separating out those 4, which was kind of a shot across the bow for me. I was told by the city that they were going to be developing water there over the next several years. I looked in the mirror this morning, I don't think I've got several years. I can't put this off. So my idea, my wife and I raised 5 kids on a single income. We saved hard. We did without a lot. Now we have money put away as retirees. And we have 15 and 2/3 grandkids. I have one grandson coming up here to work. He'll be staying with me in our camper, which I can't put on my lot because I don't have water. And it's not a construction site anymore because I can't get a building permit. Even though I have a septic and power. But one of the things we have is tax deferred income in an IRA, which when you do your minimum required distribution, you can get taxed pretty hard on that. So our idea was either to gift it to grandkids, which you can avoid some of your taxes that way, or we thought, you know, I've been coming here since 2013, this is a great place. If I give my grandkids money, they're just going to throw it away because they have no vested interest in it. And we do. If we can build a place so our grandkids have a place to stay and work in Seward, then you can have Americans working in Seward, not your J1 kids, and they're all good kids. So that was our thought. Instead of just giving it to grandkids, wash them, throw it away, and grit our teeth, we'll build a place where they can have a vested interest in their money. So that's why we did it. But the days are running out. That's all.
When did you purchase that property?
March 29th, 2022.
And what type of disclosures were given to you when you bought that property?
It showed all the easements, and it showed that there were no utilities. I met in July of 22, my oldest boy and I met with Jason. And he talked about the ability to neighbor so that we can coordinate well and septic locations. That was in July of 22. And then I got a letter in January, February of 23 from Jason saying that they had discovered that there were deed restrictions on the properties and wells and septics would not be allowed. So, and oh boy, okay, so now what? So I got an attorney involved and found out that the 4 lots that are so you've got 2 city lots in front Dickgraph, and the 2 lots that are just south of those, and the next 2 lots just south of those are the 4 that are not deed restricted. So one of those is mine. The one that's on Maple and just south of the city lot on Dickgraph is mine. And it's all cleared and it's ready to go. But we're done. So I got $40,000 in the lot right now, including the electricity and septic, and $12,000 in attorney's fees, and I'm no closer than I was.
Well, we can't make decisions at
No, I
a
know
work
that.
session, but
I had to
this
get it off my
this
chest.
informational is really good to hear.
I tried to be nice, but it's really tough.
And city moves very slowly, unfortunately.
Yeah. I
Chair
kind
Russell,
of
I
guess.
Yes.
just want to remind you there is another member of the public who may be waiting to speak.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quickbird. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak? No? After all that?
I live on Maple just for him and
Okay.
to see him get built.
Thank you for the moral support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Badger is a good friend. He's from Wyoming as well.
So that would tie in nicely with our subdivision Title 16 review, where it talks about water and sewer,
Yeah.
wells and septic. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, citizens' comments is done. The next one is commission and administration comments and responses to citizens' comments. We'll start with commission. Do you have any comments or responses?
Thank you, Carol, Chairperson Griswold, for running such a great meeting as usual, and we look forward to having everybody here the next meeting. Yeah.
Thanks for a great meeting, everyone that was here, a lot of community members, nice presentation of the fire station, and thanks for community development and administration's hard work.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think tonight's decision just reinforces like that I think something's wrong with the zoning in this city, and we should really seriously think about fixing it. There's a lot going on out there. You heard there was a bunch of properties that were being developed with these accessory dwellings through the process, but even if it's a variance that we deny, I think it's there's a lot of demand out there, and we're restricting people from doing what they want with their properties, and I think we should address that at a future work session.
Did you want to mention smaller?
Oh, yeah, and I did want to mention, yeah, I will also plug smaller fire trucks. Yes, I've heard, and this is a recurring issue, I think, as well. Anytime we talk about roads, we've heard it tonight from the R&M consultant herself. When she was talking about her own personal property, she had to have a turnaround for a fire truck. Fire trucks drive a lot of the code that we have. They drive the size of our cul-de-sacs, they drive road widths, etc. You heard how big this fire station has to be because of the apparatus is what they call it, the apparatus size. We live in a community that's not very large. We have small alleys, we have low building heights. Do we need the biggest fire trucks that money can buy, or can we get smaller ones? That's a question I'd like to put forward to our full department, I guess.
Bigger is not always better.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly solve a lot of issues on our end, and maybe, and I'd hope on the fire truck end as well.
And as you mentioned to me privately, you've seen this in Europe, and one of our audience members said they do that on the East Coast as well. So we would not be breaking new ground, which is, this is, I think, a revolutionary concept, that bigger is not better, and it would solve several problems. I'd just like to say that it's really rewarding being on planning and zoning. I think we have really hard decisions to make. Like tonight, that was a really hard decision. But it's really interesting, and I hope that we are supporting our code and our comp plan. And I know there's always room for improvements, but we're kind of restricted with what we have now. And I appreciate the audience members who came here and who spoke so eloquently about their concerns. It's really important for us to hear those comments. I appreciate the presentation, all the firefighters who sat in the audience too in support. We support them, we just have to find the right solution that works for most people, won't satisfy everybody. And we have one chair over there that could use another community member who lives in the city limits to help us broaden our perspectives and add to the conversation. Off to you, administration.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioners. I know these are long nights with a work session and a meeting, and unfortunately, usually on sunny days, but thank you for your time and service, and yeah, just to reiterate your point of just the value of multiple opinions and perspectives is really important as a body that's making decisions for individuals and the community, so it's important to have that.
And just one more thing, thanks to the clerk for keeping me on track. Appreciate that. And thanks for Clara for being there taking notes, paying attention. Okay, I call this meeting adjourned at 8:34 p.m.